Hello, everybody. We're just getting started. Give us a couple minutes to get James and Decoding up, and we will get going. And happy Christmas Eve.
Well, hello, everyone. I made it up finally. Couple false starts there. And I stopped to check to see why I didn't have 3 people that I follow marked as follow. How does that happen? I didn't do it. Anyways, Wendy, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Glad you got up early, I suppose, earlier than me. Did you do the timestamp?
I did not yet. And are the closed captions on?
That is always a very good question to ask me. So, no. Yes. Yes, they are now, Wendy. Thank you very much for asking. All right. Well, that makes it a lot easier, folks, if the captions are on. It's not that I need to read them, but somebody does. Anyways, well, here we are. And indeed, it is, let's see, what time is it here? It is a little after 11 o'clock right now on the East Coast of the United States. In UK, it is 1600 hours, and in Kyiv, it is 1803. So there we have a little timestamp. I see Decoding is here, is a speaker. Hello and welcome, Decoding.
Hi there. Hi, welcome.
Yes, and so folks who are listening, please do share the space. We always rely on you to do that. We'll do it maybe as well as we get a chance, but please do. Wendy, I'm ready to start if you are. I saw that you had a few posts or tweets that were put out lately Decoding, so I'm going to put those and some of the fundraisers into the nest.
Yes, I am ready to start. Again, as always, Decoding's time is limited. So let's get started, and we will do some news a little bit afterwards. Please go ahead, Decoding.
Great. Hi. Thank you so much for being there. And it's been an interesting week for all of us. So I'm keeping a grip on where we are. This is episode 3 of a series I started 4 weeks ago. As some of us might remember, there was technical issues on the second week. So this is episode 3, where I'm going through the piece which I spoke and delivered, the paper I delivered at the Pirate Party Security Conference at the time of the Munich Security Conference in Munich last February. And the words from the United States Vice President at that conference are continuing to resonate with new policies being released all the time. Most recently, the attempt to sanction European Union, the former several senior European Union officials for so-called free speech crimes. So this is the Disinfolklore universe that I had an intimation we were moving towards, and it's provoked into being by such actions as we have seen today. I'm also aware of my promise to Iona about 6 weeks ago that we would deal with truth, and I'm moving towards that as well. So it'll be a few more episodes where I move towards that point. But last week we saw the continued reference to the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So some of us might remember in the prehistoric past, which when I looked back on my writing over the past few months was actually only a month ago, believe it or not. And 5 weeks ago, I got the first intimation that this new round of so-called capitulation or peace talks was beginning and the pressure was on. My first intimation of it, some of us will remember picking this data point up on our timelines when the United States had attempted to take the term territorial integrity out of the annual United Nations resolution in support of Ukraine's war of independence and against Russia's aggression. At the time, that stood out to me like a sore thumb, and the reference to sovereignty without the reference to territorial integrity is, and the sound writ is in both those terms, territorial and integrity. It's also in sovereignty, but it's disguised as the rent element, reine, queen in French. Originating from this idea of straightness, truth, and the rod, which, for instance, President Zelensky held in his right hand when he was inaugurated as president in the Verkhovna Rada, and the current English king, who is sovereign. There's only one sovereign on the island of Britain, and that is the king. He also holds a rod, a straight rod, in his right hand when he was inaugurated as monarch. And these are very, very old Indo-European rites, and they are integrated into our language and the way we as Indo-European communities govern ourselves, going right back to Mykolaiivka village in Zaporozhye, where the Yamna community, who spread Indo-European languages, religions, and forms of governance into the area between Ireland and India, lived between 4100 BCE and 3500 BCE. So when I see today the president of the European Commission, the president of France, and Indo-European civilizations' greatest leaders, particularly in Europe, referencing in almost identical terms the term sovereignty and digital sovereignty, it pleases me enormously. And so we're moving towards the relationship between these concepts and trying to define what is rightful and what is truthful, which is what we try to do every day in real time on our timelines. And I am a great admirer of postmodern philosophy. I studied it as a postgraduate at Georgetown. But I am also a little old-fashioned insofar as I do believe there is truth, and truth is not merely a mobile army of metaphors. It can be, but it's not merely that. And there is truth when we sit on a chair. We're sitting on the chair. And as we previously discussed about emptiness and with Wendy, the idea of emptiness, that ultimately nothing does matter. However, in conventional reality, we have elaborated and established certain rules, certain regulations, and certain rights. And in those, in that conventional reality that we're living in, for me, the preeminent rights are those established after World War II and the legal order, the international legal order, for which 8 million Ukrainians died, including 1 million Ukrainian Jews. 8 million European Jews died, and however many tens of millions of others died. And we established this set of rules and regulations after World War II. And for me, that is the truth against which, the standard against which we measure any speech trying to incite hatred or division. And sadly, we see the lack of respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, which China, for instance, practiced when it invaded and occupied Tibet. and which Russia has denigrated 1 billion times, and which sadly we are seeing now the threats against the serious threats against Greenland and military threats against Greenland, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and also against the European Union's digital sovereignty, that these concepts and these ideas are more important than ever. And how I see all of this is part of the Disinfolklore universe, which the MAGA administration, the current MAGA administration, as well as Russia, as well as China, the CCP, the Communist Party in China, are attempting to wrap us up inside. And thankfully, for the time being, and I see no clouds on the horizon in this front, the European Union is holding up what's right, as indeed is Australia, Japan, and one of the main means we can use to determine who is upholding right, i.e. the post-World War II legal and social order in today's world, is how they are supporting Ukraine. And some of us might well have friends who don't necessarily support Ukraine, or who have had their minds contaminated by Russian disinfolklore, so that they kind of think they can challenge for the sake of debate or argument and argue Russian information warfare tropes, either knowingly or unknowingly, just to, as they say, épater la bourgeoisie, to kind of just cause a bit of problems, or just to have an intellectual debate about it, and that's kind of where it begins. And then on the other end of the scale, it's what the Trump administration is withholding aid or not doing what it should be doing to defend Ukraine's territorial integrity. And it's not enough to defend its sovereignty, because the three archetypes which are central to Indo-European communities since the time in Nikolaevka, Zaporizhia, between 4100 BCE and 2500 BC, or 3500 BC, around that time, when the Yamna was in one community before they spread out and established all the different Indo-European cultures: Celtic, Germanic, Indic, including Iranian and Hindu and Slavic, and all the rest of them. That they had these three archetypes in their community: sovereignty, security, and prosperity, fertility. So these three elements, which are represented today, for instance, in our memory of the Hindi caste system, where you have priests, soldiers, and farmers. And this idea: the priests are one aspect of sovereignty, and obviously the soldiers are an aspect of security, and the farmers are an aspect of prosperity or economy or fertility. And again, the writ is in all those. The writ sound is in those: security, fertility, as prosperity, and sovereignty as well. And so we have these archetypes very deeply embedded into our language, into the way we think, into how we govern and organize ourselves. And it really tickles me to have come across this whole literature, which is from this amazing French philosopher, Georges Dumézil, who discovered these three archetypes: sovereignty, security, fertility, prosperity, immanent in all the Indo-European traditions in the 1930s. And so we're going to move towards that point. But it really excites me to see how present and important these concepts, and primary and fundamental these concepts are even today in these statements of resistance. to this attempt to infringe on other countries' sovereign rights to determine what is and what is not hate speech. And Germany's lead in all of these matters is, I recognize it and I celebrate it, because obviously they are, because of their history, they are, and Merz is very, very much, as a self-declared rightist, he is very much part of the post-World War II generation, which believes in never again. And I did do this piece, and some of you might remember, about 6 months ago, where I spoke about how rescuing the right, I never myself, I identified as on the political, self-identified on the political right. But when I look at how Maloney and Merz and President Zelensky are defending the identity of rightness, meaning truth, meaning our post-World War II legal order, with all of their utterances, with, as far as we're aware, most, if not all, of their actual actions. So putting their money where their mouth is. I saw Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, this evening tweet that since the beginning of the war, the European Union has provided Ukraine with the equivalent of 193 billion euros worth of aid, and now this 90 billion euros worth of aid. So this is the kind of reminder of actions matching words. I find it particularly disappointing that people I know, I'm not even asking for a commitment from them. I'm just asking for them to recognize how the war in Ukraine, how many terrible things have happened there. On the other hand, I celebrate so many other people, including family members, who not only because they realize it's very important to me, but have this sense of rightness. And even though they don't think about like Ukraine all day long, like most of us do, and spend most of our time trying to come up with ways we can help Ukraine in whatever ways we feel we can, and the time and the energy we can spare, or the money we can spare. Just normal people, they make a rhetorical commitment to support Ukraine and to try to understand the conflict, and they celebrate Ukraine's victories and Russia's losses. And I celebrate those people just as much as I get a bit sad when other people don't recognize what's going on. So, for many of you, you'll know I spent this time, the 2015 to 2018, in this particular part of eastern Ukraine, in Stanitsa Luhanska, which was the only official crossing point from Russia-occupied Ukraine into government-controlled Ukraine. And I worked for the Organization for Cooperation in Europe, Security and Cooperation in Europe, which was founded it was founded after the Berlin Wall fell, but it comes from the CSD. I can't remember the name of it. These initials from 1976 and the Helsinki Final Act, which I had cause to read this week. And territorial integrity is in every clause. Russia signed up to it and has violated sovereignty and territorial integrity, because when you think about it, you can be a sovereign individual yourself as an individual, but you need an area, which eventually finds its way into Aryan. You need an area, which is a modern English word, but comes from the same root and the same idea, Oriel, Ariel. You need an area in which to exercise your sovereignty, and unless this is secure, this area, and defined, then your sovereignty, and for most of us as individuals, that's kind of our personal space. But it might also be our house, our apartment, our family, our community, our background, our intellectual hinterland, our education, our class, if we think in those terms, our identity as Ukraine supporters is part of our territorial integrity as individuals, and people can. When they infringe on your territory, they're also automatically infringing on your sovereignty and your security. So I can say I see territorial integrity as sitting between these two fundamental Indo-European archetypes of sovereignty and security. And then the whole purpose of all of this is fertility, meaning making the community bigger and prosperous, and prosperity. So this idea that you can, once you have this area, you have this secure area where certain rules are sovereign and probably elite leaders and community, that you can then get about to farming or train your horses and make your wheels and farm your sheep, or indeed your digital identities. And so this kind of package of measures and concepts and manifestations of them is particularly fundamental to Indo-European communities. Other linguistic and cultural communities have different priorities, but for us, it is this package, which, for good or for ill, has become embedded in international law and in the UN Charter and in the Helsinki Final Act, which founded the OSCE. So while I was there in eastern Ukraine, in Stanitsa Luhanska, I encountered this what I call the first Disinfolklore universe, and for those who weren't there, it's akin to perhaps what you saw with MAGA affecting people that you knew. And it goes from being a joke to actually being an identity-forming element for people who go MAGA. Some of us might have relatives or friends who have gone properly MAGA, and maybe some, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, have gone full MAGA and now seem to be emerging from that spell, and I celebrate that. So I engineered the term Disinfolklore from my experience as a diplomat on this bridge in Stanitsa Luhanska in eastern Ukraine. And the scene itself it's a biosphere reserve, forested. The Donets River, a very famous river since antiquity. The Donets is part of this series of DN-sounded rivers. In my work, there's 3 sounds which are really important and which are imminent in almost every sentence I speak, kind of on purpose now, but I notice it in other people's speech and these fundamental vocabularies. The most important is the MN sound. The second sound is the RT rit, this rit sound, which the earliest attestations of that rit sound we get in Arta, meaning truth, in ancient Iranian, the Avestan language, Arta, and in Vedic, which is the first attested Indic language, Rita, from 1100 BC, Rita, RTA. So you've got this right, rit, meaning truth, Arta, meaning truth, A-R-T, rit, art. And so that sound is still in the words we use for sovereignty, droit in French, law, or loi. And it's also in territorial integrity, and that The rivers, the third sound is the DN sound. So we've got the Don River, which marked the border between the area protected by the goddess Europa and Asia. So we have this map from Isidora of Seville from about 6th century. Isidora of Seville was basically the Wikipedia. As how someone kind of wrote. I prefer the Encyclopedia Britannica, maybe of the pre-Middle Age world. And there's this famous book of, it's called the Book of Drum Shnachta in Irish Celtic culture, but unfortunately it's lost. We only know about it through various references. And the lore goes that the last copy of it was swapped for a copy of Isidora of Seville's etymologies, which I'm sure was very important to have in rural Ireland at the time. But we've got tons of copies of Isidora of Seville's etymologies and none left of the Book of Drum Shnachta. But anyway, Isidore of Seville defines the area protected by the goddess Europa as being the area east of the Tanay, the Don, Danay, Tanay, Don, west of the Don River, and east of the Don River is Asia. And east of the Nile River is also Asia, according to Isidore of Seville. And so... and then you have the Donets River, which is the Little Don River. Then you have the Don Dnieper River, the Dnipro as we call it now in English, transliteration from the Ukrainian, the Don Upper River. So if you're looking at that from Crimea, from the perspective of Crimea, it's the upper one. Then you have the Don Istris, which is the Dniester River. And then you have, which is the lower Don. And then you have the Danube. So you have these great rivers of Europe, all with the DN sound in their moniker. And in ancient times, actually, the Danube in Ukraine was called the Dnistris as well. So those three signs. So I was on the Don. I didn't know any of this while I was there, thankfully, because I probably would have bored to tears my fellow diplomats with all of this stuff had I discovered it there. But it made such an impact on me, this whole setting, which was beautiful forests going either side of the river, willows hanging over the tree, and this road, this bridge, this iron bridge, which is very important in folklore. And then on one side of the bridge, about 1 kilometer north of the bridge, north of the river, was the Ukrainian armed forces position, defending the bridge and defending Ukraine government-controlled territory. And then on the south side of the bridge were the Russian occupiers. And then in May 2016, I arrived there in February 2015, just after the bridge itself had been blown up. But you could still cross the river. But it was a very difficult passage, like in a computer game or something. And a distance of maybe 1.5 kilometers between Ukraine Armed Forces position on this road to the Russian occupier position, which was just on the other side of the Donets River, just on the south side of the Donets River. And then it was about 15 kilometers to Luhansk city, which was and is under occupation by the Russians. And in this whole scene it was a beautiful, halcyon, bucolic, lovely place with bird song and trees and wild animals who often would set off landmines which were in the forestry. And up before the war, before 2014, it was really sleepy. It had played a starring role in World War II as well, and in the forests and the areas either side of the river colleagues would show me shrapnel from the Second World War. So there was an enormous amount of ordnance, so much so that there was this rusty shrapnel from all over the forestry. And then while I was there, each night there was massive amounts of artillery strikes from one side to the other, usually trying to avoid people and soldiers. They were kind of marking territory, saying we're here, or maybe responding to imagined threats. Or often soldiers would tell, or people would tell me, and soldiers would say, oh, we get paid, or the other side gets paid to fire its artillery. And this is like an archetypal Disinfolklore fable. I never got to the bottom of it, but it's plausible that was why they were firing at each other. And some nights I catalogued thousands of ceasefire violations and filled very dutifully my Minsk form, which was then signed by my supervisor. And then who knows where it is? I've mentioned that before. So each morning I would go down to the bridge, and I'd go first to the Ukrainian Armed Forces position, and I would speak to the commanding officer. And after a while, we got into kind of a routine, and they would tell me stories of what had happened the night before, which I would write down. Then I would pass by the sometimes thousands of ordinary civilians who were just waiting in queues on this borderline, this border territory. A lot of folk tales are about borders between between this world and another, between in a liminal world, between truth and fiction, between fantasy and amusement. And there was this kind of liminal world. The Russians are fantastic at creating these borders wherever they go, really, and controlling people through starvation, but also and famine and murder, but also through borders and queues and then I'd cross the bridge and go and speak to the occupiers, and often the stories they would tell me would be the exact opposite, the mirror opposite of what the Russian or what the Ukrainian soldiers were telling me. And at the same time, I was also doing an MBA at Oxford, and I was traveling back there every 6 weeks. And so I was kind of engaged in this other world there in Oxford, where we were studying Silicon Valley and entrepreneurial finance and internet companies and various things. And so I made the conceptual link between trolling in computer culture and trolling as what the Ukrainian armed forces and on one side of the bridge and the Russian occupiers, particularly on the other side of the bridge, were doing to me. They were trolling my emotions with these stories. I could never tell whether they're right or wrong. And then also I noticed this phenomenon of how the internet and internet lore interacted with the reality on the ground, and the Disinfolklore universe, which I saw being created inside Russia-occupied Ukraine, is my training set, as it were. Like in if you're training an artificial intelligence neural network algorithm, you use masses of data to try and train the artificial neurons to process data. If you want to train it to identify cats, if that's the output you want, then you put in lots of pictures of cats. And so the training data set for me is this 3 years of going and hearing these stories, and then watching how the stories that I was dealing with on the bridge interacted with the reality created inside the information space inside Russia-occupied Ukraine, which I went into every day and spent periods of time. I spent 6 weeks in Luhansk city over the Christmas of 2016. And at all times, including for the 4 years after I left there, I was very engaged in the information space, and I still am, of Russia-occupied Ukraine. And it was just such a strange phenomenon. It stimulated a lot of intellectual labor on my part to work out what are they doing. And an example, for instance, one day, a Russian colleague, because the OSCE, I was embedded with Russians, which added an extra level of complexity to my work there and my job there. A Russian colleague and I went to the bridge, and there was several tons of sausages in white bags, which had just been dumped in exactly the halfway point between the Ukrainian armed forces position and the Russian occupiers' position. The Ukrainian armed forces guys said, "We don't know anything about this. They just appeared overnight." Then the Russian occupier said, well, when we first saw this appearing, we thought it was a new Ukrainian armed forces position. So we trained all our weapons on it, but we'd like you to try and arrange for this stuff to be removed. Otherwise, we're just going to destroy it all. And it turned out it was sausages, Kharkiv sausages, which have a particular mythological significance in the minds of people who lived in the Soviet Union, where sausages were a great luxury. To me, as a vegetarian, they're a great. It's pretty gross, basically, the whole thing. And so I and my Russian colleague spent about an hour with the armed Russian occupiers, inspecting the sausages. They were showing me the sausages and cutting them open, and I have photographs of it all. And then there was drones around filming us, and then for the next 3 weeks, me and my Russian colleague were appearing in Disinfolklore stories in the Russian occupation, and the stories developed from. We were smuggling it, so they had no compunction. They had no problem with dropping their own operative in this by saying, I and the OSCE basically was smuggling sausages into Russia-occupied Ukraine to make a bit of money on the side. And then lots of other different iterations of this. The story featured every day for a few weeks, eventually becoming this was the Ukrainians trying to poison us. So we've destroyed all the sausages, and they've blown them all up. And so this was a classic, an archetypal experience from me, where I personally featured in a whole, what I call today a vector or an instance, an observable, a whole system of trolls on one theme, on one temnik, on one theme of I call it the luxury sausage troll saga, because it went on. And it's kind of the mundane interacts with the slightly annoying, because I did have to explain to my boss, no, I had nothing, I didn't do any of this, and as a new story would come out, they'd be like, well, what are they saying? And some people immediately dismissed it, others begin to believe it, and I had other instances like that, where there would be an explosion, and I would go to try and find out what had exploded. Had someone fired something or not? And I passed one particular occasion. I passed a Ukrainian soldier who was just polishing his RPG, his weapon, which fired grenades, and he was kind of polishing it. I said, "Did you hear that explosion?" He's like, "Nah, didn't hear anything." And then I go on another 500 meters to the Russian occupiers, and I say, "Do you hear that explosion?" And the senior Russian officer, the most senior officer I had knowingly dealt with at that point, suddenly took me on this whirlwind tour of damage to the bridge, and showing me clearings in the forest where the Ukrainians diversionary group had apparently fired at them. Then he shows me blood on the ground, but actually it's blackberry season and raspberry, and tons of blackberries are being transported across this bridge from Ukraine into the Russia-occupied Ukraine. So I wasn't quite sure whether it was real blood or not. And then the next day, our team was there, and they were shown injured people who were still around, and then stories were saying there were crisis actors, and just this whole new system of trolls. And so that's my training set. That's when I'm reading about when I'm reading about accusations in MAGA lore about crisis actors, or Pizzagate, or practically, every day we're reading about stuff on Twitter since the full-scale invasion. Bizarre stuff. Most of us have a good nose for it now, but this was the origins of my training set, and that's where I came up with the idea of Disinfolklore, which is this form of narrative. It's a narrative form akin to folklore, triggering the same emotional impacts as folklore, but which has real world impacts on how you perceive reality. And all of this took place in an area which, for me, I associated with folklore the moment I arrived there, because of the forest, these houses. I've spoken before about the Mother and the Maiden tale, which was another of these archetypal moments when I kind of understood what was going on, and the Russian use of archetypes in their Disinfolklore, and also my only reference point. We perceive reality through folklore much more than we're consciously aware of. I'm aware of it because I've spent the last 8 years of my life trying to make sense of my experience there during the 3 years. And so Victoria Amelina, who had written about the executed Renaissance, which is this phenomenon of the 1920s in Ukraine, which I'm sure this has been in other segments, where the Russians decided, we're going to have to brainwash the Ukrainians, but we can't do it through Russian because they only speak Ukrainian. So let's pretend we'll support their culture, but we'll give them 10 years, and this Ukrainianization. Putler constantly bangs on about this when he's on record many times saying he wants to correct Lenin's mistake, and by that he means Ukrainization. And you have this great flowering of Ukrainian culture during the 1920s, and then naturally the Russians executed all of them, hundreds, thousands of Ukrainian writers in different ways, in this forest in Finland, but also in Kharkiv. And Victoria Amelina I learned about it from her writing. And then, of course, she was going around Ukraine then collecting stories about the violence for the war crimes tribunals. And then she wrote this when she published her diaries before she was murdered. The Russians are really thorough about how they kill Ukrainian, try to destroy Ukrainian culture, and they will be thorough about trying to destroy our cultures if we give them the chance. Look what they are doing to American political culture at the moment, and America's reputation, just by dint of this bizarre spectacle of Witkoff and co. And this is what the Russians do. They pollute and contaminate everything. And one of Victoria Amelina's short stories was Shell Hole in a Fairy Tale. And the fairy tale kindergarten I knew well in Stanicy Luhanska. And in one of the first salvos in the war. It was the Wagner group who I encountered in Stanicy Luhansk in 2015. First, they were given the job of invading the rest of Ukraine from there on the 24th of February 2022, and they fired a shell into the fairy tale kindergarten in Stanicy Luhansk. And so I have this great photo, because it was in the front page of the New York Times, a whistling sound, then an explosion, shelling hits a kindergarten in Ukraine. But you can tell you don't really need to be an expert in understanding how missiles work to know that the entry and exit point, the entry point is from the southern end into this kindergarten. And that was, I think that was around the 22nd or something of February. So it's before everyone recognized the full-scale invasion. But when I saw that, and when I saw them also bombing the Shastia power plant, I knew the whole war was imminent in those two actions: destroy the kindergarten and try to kill children. No one was killed in that. And the otherworldliness of the photograph of this kind of, the kindergartens are really important, even more so than in Ireland, where I grew up, or in Western countries. I would postulate that it was very much part of the culture in the Soviet space. I suppose brainwashing began in the kindergarten. But what Ukrainians did after 2014 in each of their villages with this decentralization, they invested huge efforts into bringing their kindergartens and these institutions, which they had inherited from the Russian occupation, but bring them up to European standards. And for me, going around, particularly in the years from 2018 to 2022, when I was based in Dnipro and mainly ranging around Dnipropetrovsk, but also Zaporizhia Oblast, particularly the area of southern Zaporizhia Oblast around Huliopol. And Huliopol is one where, they had European standard schools, what they describe as European standard schools, with massive, amazing sports facilities that have all been built using money coming from USAID, from the European Union, and from Kyiv. And the kindergarten, so the desecration of these symbols of Ukraine's post 2014 emergence from its Soviet cloud, which the Russians, of course, still have never. Probably there's a few elite places in Leningrad or in Moscow where you have top-class European standard schools, but the rest is just rubbish everywhere. But Ukraine had these, and so firing a shell in there into the fairy tale kindergarten, and then everywhere I look is these folkloric references. So you have this fusion, this melding of like the sausage troll saga, of this bizarre situation, which could have caused a war, could have been the war, if the Russians had destroyed these 2 tons of sausages in these white bags that Saturday afternoon. I never got to the truth of what had happened. I presumed it was some sort of smuggling, some sort of smuggling operation, even though I was there. And then out of that, the Russians create all of this Disinfolklore, all of these stories, to help implement in the brains of Ukrainians living inside the occupation the idea that they were under threat. The international community was trying to poison them with poisonous sausages. We were just these hypocrites here trying to monitor the peace, yet all we were interested in was smuggling sausages. And the symbolic significance of, for instance, sausages to a Westerner like me. I mean, I learned it, but sausages, especially Kharkiv sausages, luxury sausages, in the minds of people of a certain age in Russia-occupied Luhansk were there's still this great luxury. And so it has this resonance, the symbolic resonance, which may be invisible to us. But all the elements of what I now understand to be Disinfolklore and this fusion of reality with fiction, with folklore, which has a really strong emotional impact. It's more than merely watching a film or reading a good book, which has no strategic intent behind it. It's a method of changing how we actually perceive reality, and it's this Disinfolklore universe, which is made up of millions of sausage troll saga like memes and bizarre stories that has the effect of brainwashing people, whether they're in MAGA or in Russia occupied Ukraine. And maybe now, because maybe now we're seeing the high point of MAGA. I hope so, and I hope the relentlessness of these millions, tens of millions of documents, Epstein documents, which explode the foundation, the main foundation myth in MAGA, that perhaps this will have the power to wake everyone up from their spell, but we can't be complacent. So I'll leave it at that in terms of episode 2. I have a few things which I wrote during the week, which I'd love to talk about. If there's time, there is another 7 minutes, but maybe people have something to say. If not, I'll just go through a couple of the things which I wrote out.
Thanks, Decoding. That was a really, really fascinating story of your work there, and how things happen and how trolls come about, and how they continue to be used in that way. So thank you very much. James, did you have any comments or questions?
I had some comments, and yeah, thank you. That's interesting. What I realize is, and this is the obvious thing, I guess, that civilization is built layers at a time, and you link together the language. And there's been successively different languages that have emerged, but kind of keeps the form somewhat. And that's really important. And similarly, other structures that we share, like governments and whatnot, also are built and can change over time. And hopefully, it keeps moving in this sort of same direction. Obviously, it doesn't go in a straight line. And we do see these little failures, and it goes back a little bit, and then it continues. And I would say that and so what I was thinking about along those lines was just how treacherous we are right now. What a treacherous position we're in, I should say. That we are looking at a situation where our once most trusted leadership pool maybe is not trustworthy at all, and that could set us back, I could say, hundreds of years if they abolish the international system that has been established, that has made, I think, it possible for us to have World War III without necessarily using atomic bombs. So I think there's so much at stake now. So I could say more, but I think that's a good point to leave it at.
Yeah. Obviously. Very good point. Yeah, this idea that progress is inevitable. We have so many instances where we go backwards. And from my personally, I'm not. We can't give anyone the benefit of the doubt in this, and I'm seeing the European leaders aren't and haven't since the White House visit last February. One of the ideas which I'm pretty clear on this week is basically that what I call the zero-sum war. So basically, Putler and President Zelensky understand this is a zero-sum war, whichever side loses will, as the Manchu King dynasty or the Hittites did for 2 millennia, completely disappear from history. And the Hittite is the first attested Indo-European language, and the Hittite Empire lasted from about 1500 BCE to 1100 BCE. They signed their first treaty, which we have in international law. And I'm about to visit Mitanni, where the Mitanni Empire was, which I'm really excited about doing. And the Treaty of Mitanni between the Hittites and the Mitanni themselves were a Semitic language-speaking people, but they worshipped Indo-European gods. And we know this because in the Treaty of Mitanni, which I'll post in the Purple Pill, actually, the wording of it, we know they, the guarantor of the treaty is Teshub, the storm god. I've just named my new kitten, Teshub. But also Indo-European, Indurata, for instance, who became Indra in India, and in charge of the sovereignty element. And then you have the various different other Indo-European gods there. So we know they were the oaths. So today we see this, I think most of us are pretty convinced the Ukrainians aren't going to accept a Budapest number again, Budapest, whatever it's called again, memorandum type thing again. But everyone's talking about who will define, who will protect it. Protect the treaty. And in the Treaty of Mitanni, which is 1500 BCE, you have the god Mitrashil, who's Mitra, who is the god of juridical, of law, and the god Indra, who's kind of the god of sovereignty of both legal and magical aspects of sovereignty, and then the gods Nashatyana, which in India became the Nasatya, who are the horse-born divine twins. So again, we're scratching around looking for guarantors of peace, and this is where it began in 1500 BCE. And actually, I'm working on several phones at the moment, so I can't put it in the Purple Pill on this one, but I will later, maybe, if people are interested in it. So by the zero-sum war, I mean this idea, which we see in the FT again. The FT just continues to get rolled and trolled, as far as I can see. But the idea that Putler is unknowing and misled by all around him is such a childish fantasy that I'll never listen to any serious commentator who argues this as the sole explanation for what's going on. So I believe we have to bank on Putler having a clear-eyed idea of what is going on, and he knows, as far as I can see, because he understands all of Russia's crimes. So he pretends not to, and Russians pretend not to in their Disinfolklore, but they understand what they did in Bucha. They knew they were planning to blame Bucha on Ukrainian Nazis and then invite in the Germans and the EU to see, look what the Ukrainians did. Our war is justified. So they know all of their crimes. They pretend they don't. They pretend they've forgotten, but they understand it. And because they know all of their crimes, they know what Ukraine is going to do to avenge these crimes. And so this is why I call it a zero-sum war. And this is my governing concept of what's going on, and actually has been for a long time, but even more so now, while we're going through this peace process stuff. So if you think that Putler doesn't know about this, then this is the old-fashioned good czar, bad boy or troll which we laugh when we see those videos of the Russian citizens appealing to him as if he gives a cahoot about any of this. And so, therefore, Putler's dominant strategy is to continue the war as long as possible to save himself, and he sees it, Russia's ethnos. He's talked about Russia's ethnos, that we Europeans just want to destroy his ethnos. And this is where a slight bit of trolling from me comes in, but I think it's positive trolling, where someone I saw today or the other day, which is this Manchu King dynasty, which ruled China for about 400 years until around 1911, I think it was. And now it's virtually, and so it was a dynasty, but it was also an ethnos, an ethnicity. People identified as it. And today it's really hard to find anyone in China who self-identifies as Manchu. It just disappeared. And so what I say to, as Chuck Farrer might put it, our Russian listening guests, but I don't think we have any. I doubt we have any. Don't worry about your ethnos disappearing, because the Chinese have a very gentle way of disappearing ethnoses, so you won't even notice that. So like Putin, he may not know, he may think that Russia is occupying Kupiansk, for instance. But he also knows that Kupiansk is like 1,000 kilometers east of Kyiv, and he wants Kyiv. He doesn't want Kupiansk. So while the minutiae of the occupation may be, he may not know the actual details of it, he does know the entire war is a complete and utter disaster. And so this, and Ukrainians know, we see Anne of Odessa as well, but she's not my only source for this, saying, even if this peace treaty was agreed by the Russians, we're not going to stop, because there will only be one ethnos at the end of this war. And my money's on the Ukrainians, and not on the Russians. But if you know that as a Russian leader, then you will continue to the very end. It does seem as if European leaders get this. Clearly, the mad uncle in the attic, i.e. Donald, and the people around him, I don't think they get it. I mean, I presume there are some people around them who get it. And then I did do a piece on why I became Decoding Trolls this week, but I'll talk about that next time maybe. But so that's probably all I have to say. But if anyone has any questions, happy to chat. But then I'll have to leave very soon. But I'll re-listen later. Out.
We've got 5 people who are hiding in anonymous up there, so maybe it's them. But anyways, let's go on to speakers, or speakers with hands up, and that would be hi CC, and then Martin. Hello.
Hi, happy holidays, friends. Been enjoying this talk decoding, especially the sausage trolls. So, my thought is that we need a version of NAFO. I'm calling in from the beleaguered country of America, and I feel like we need I don't even care what the battalion is, be it linear B, like you name it, I'll take it, as long as there's some efficacy there and it works against the administration that's undermining so many countries, including my own. So I'm open, my DMs are open for ideas, but I was also thinking sausage rolls, sausage trolls. So we could have a whole sausage troll battalion for the US, who's particularly under attack right now. I think we should make it fun and humorous, because that's always, Russians don't understand humor. That's for the Russian trolls in the Anon. So I just really wanted to say happy holidays. Merry Christmas. For me, it's Merry Solstice. It's my favorite holiday, very meaningful. And that was a great talk. And I look forward to people's ideas on coming up with this new battalion. Hi, Martin.
Thanks, CC. Appreciate that much. Yes. Well, there is another group that we're associated with that's working, more on America directly. So I can hook you up if you want with the context. Forrest would be not a bad person to talk to about that, since you know Forrest. Anyways, well, okay, Martin, I bet you've got something great to say. And by the way, I like the troll roll sausage. Yeah, I like that. Anyways, Martin, hello, welcome.
James, thank you, my friend. And Cece, hi, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Happy nearing the end of Hanukkah for all my Jewish brethren. And Martin Zelig in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I just want to begin. I have a question, a bit of a rhetorical question for you, Decoding Trolls, but I just want to begin with a little anecdote, if I may. You mentioned I was listening with rapt interest into your talk. Fascinating, enlightening, and so necessary for us to hear, because you bring all that important historical and personal context into it. So thank you again. A friend of mine here, he's deceased now, an older chap. He was a Ukrainian Canadian, a scholar in history, and spoke fluent Ukrainian and Russian too. Anyways, long story short, many years ago, I remember he was going to a conference in the U.S. When it was much easier to cross the border. Well, I won't get into that right now. With his wife, and he had been invited by a professor at I think it was Southern Illinois University of Southern Illinois, whatever. And his wife had cooked up a whole batch of Ukrainian sausage to take across to their friends, because this professor was hosting them. And anyways, long story short, my friend and his wife, they were driving from here in Winnipeg, and they got to the border. It's one of the most it was one of the busiest border crossings between Canada and the U.S. It's called Pembina Emerson, just about maybe 70 miles from where I live. And they got there, and anything to declare, and he pointed to the plate in the back seat covered up, and he said, "Oh, no, you can't take that across." But no, sorry, you can't. So the U.S. security took him. They continued on the drive. Eventually, they got to their destination in Illinois, and they told their host, and he said, my friend's name was George. He says, "George," he says, "don't you know, American border guards love Ukrainian sausage?" So I just wanted to bring that little anecdote in when you mentioned about the sausage from Kharkiv.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Anyways, my dear late friend. So I wanted to, so many things to say, but I'll narrow it down and to this. Yes, of course, you're right. Putler is guilty, knows all about the crimes. He's the one that ordered it. In the words of Harry Truman, the buck stops here. So it's all on him, of course. Why hasn't he been charged with more war crimes by the ICC, apart from the one that already has been he's already been indicted for, and that is what I would call the stealing of Ukrainian children? Why haven't there been more war crimes charges brought against this brutal tyrant, knowing what we know about him and what we see daily happening in this war of genocidal aggression?
Great
Decoding.
question. Great question. I could probably. So I've been thinking about it today, actually, because I was listening earlier to Michael Cohen and a couple other people talking about the document dump, and it reminds me of another aspect of my past where I worked for this New York law firm called Fishbein, Badia, Wagner, Harding, which was closely associated with Giuliani and Herman Badia, who was one of the first Hispanic senators, a state senator, I think, and council member in New York City. And we worked also for Donald Trump. And the case I was involved in before I went to Cambridge to study law, because I was a paralegal, but I worked on Bear Stearns, where Epstein worked as well. And this was obviously long before Bear Stearns exploded. But when Bear Stearns exploded, I'll tell you, I was not surprised. And it occurred to me today, as I was listening about the document that the chaos of that particular of these files. This is a catastrophe for Donald and everyone. There's tens of millions of documents. We have enough documents now to know there's tens of millions more to come. But from that perspective of a lawyer, you have, I'll say infinity for the sake as a metaphor. You have infinity of different ways to charge particular criminals. When you don't, you have there's a set of different ways for any particular set of facts, and you develop a theory about it, and you work out, you take a view on what is the most solid, the solid charges to take, and if the person is guilty of huge numbers of crimes, then you will try and take the most solid one. So any of us who followed, for instance, the Stormy Daniels case from the first time Michael Cohen was charged and then jailed for it, it was then done on illegal funding of the election, because the payment to Stormy Daniels should have been registered. So that was the most solid case they could make, that Donald could make in his vengeful way against Michael Cohen, but he was unindicted co-conspirator number one in that case. But then when it came to, then it was dismissed. And then when it came to doing it again, it turned into a business record fraud case. And so by analogy, you can see the clearest case against Putler as who is entitled to sovereign immunity, because these are acts which he has done as a head of state. But because international law, this principle, which sadly the current regime in the United States and Putler and all of the paleo-masculinist conservatives want to get rid of, which is that international law has primacy over domestic or municipal laws, it's known in the game, that with the crimes like the stealing of children under the Geneva Conventions, it's a really clear-cut crime, and he has admitted to it. The idiot, he is just as idiotic as Donald, in the sense that if you were their lawyer, you'd be just constantly have your head in your hands, because they keep on admitting to crimes which they're not immune from. And so he has admitted on TV stealing these children, as has Bova. But then, of course, the Council of Europe, we saw 2 weeks ago, has established the tribunal to try Russia for the crime of aggression. And then Putler and all of the leadership will be responsible for that. And then they've committed so many crimes that under the genocide, we see this very slow case going through the on the genocide case, tortuous and very complicated, and it will go on for years. But then we see the the Compensation Commission signed last week in The Hague as well. So this is where Ukrainians will be able to claim compensation. And you see this whole, and again, this goes back to Putler understanding what awaits him and Russia and why they will never relent, because there's no chance, as far as I can see, in this universe, unless the European Union gets catapulted into a Disinfolklore universe, which I don't see happening at the moment, thankfully. When I made my Munich speech, I wasn't sure. And that was it was literally I think it was probably the same day. It was the same day that President Zelensky was speaking in Munich. And J.D. Vance, I think, spoke the next day or maybe that day as well. But it wasn't clear to me how, after the White House visit, it would go. The typical pattern would have been everyone kind of tries to assuage the Americans and sells out Ukraine. That's what had happened since 2014, but that didn't happen. And so you see this huge pincer movement, like a lobster claw, against Russia, and notwithstanding Ukraine's execution of justice by blowing up all of these long-term assets. And so, yes, it would be great to see him charged for absolutely everything. But this crime is serious enough that the key would be thrown away, and it's the easiest to prove. He's admitted it, so they could convince these extremely conservative judges. And why hasn't it? Well, unfortunately, as you know, I think we discussed this before. I won't go into too detail, but for personal reasons. But I think it's 5 judges in the ICJ are now sanctioned by the United States, including the chief prosecutor. I'm hoping that what happened today, now Europe has to, in my humble opinion, say to America, sorry, we've helped you for decades, but now it's over. The chief prosecutor is accused of something which I suspect he didn't do. And we see this coalition between the United States, Israel, and Russia trying to destroy the International Criminal Court, which is the apex of the system that was established after World War II. It was almost unimaginable that the International Criminal Court would be established before the Rome Statute was founded, which is around the time, from memory, I think just the early part of this century. And now Israel and the United States and Russia together are trying to destroy it through all sorts of disgusting means. And so I suspect they're under a great deal of pressure. But these warrants for his arrest, and indeed Netanyahu's arrest, are still alive, and the case against Russia is much stronger. So I'd say to that is the best, the easiest chance of a conviction, the easiest chance to get a warrant against a sitting president is really difficult, really, really almost impossible. But we're seeing justice every day being rigged. So that'll be my explanation from a lawyerly perspective. But I do recognise the frustration that we don't see a massive charge sheet and constantly have the pressure up. And I will also mention the European Court of Human Rights case, which is the definitive history for as long as our civilization lasts, which is, I take James's point, may not be very long, but as long as it lasts and as long as we're fighting to keep it, that 600-page judgment will stand as the definitive history of Russia's war of annihilation against Ukraine, starting in February 2014. It settles as a matter of law, in fact, basically everything about the war in Ukraine, and it should be the last word of it. I wish we lived in a world like we probably lived in before, where that judgment, those 600 pages, and all of the decisions about when the occupation started, the destruction of all freedom of religion in Ukraine by the Russians, the murder of people, the Disinfolklore crimes in Russia-occupied Ukraine, where it killing the journalists and people like Victoria Amelina and Victoria Roshishina. And I wish we lived in a world where that formed the framework, the mentality, the mental frame for humanity. But alas, it's really up to us, probably in this community and Ukraine and other great campaigners and lawyers, to keep on injecting these memory of these definitive judgments into people's minds. So that's my long answer to that question. Great question, Martin.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yes, it's a difficult case that's before the ICJ. The one about, there is no Ukrainian genocide on Russian speakers. That is indeed had some ugly twist to it. So it doesn't always pay to hurry. It probably pays to really have the deck stacked as best you can stack it. But I see, CC, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so Decoding, what would you propose an equivalent? We know that they're fascism in particular does not like shame nor humor. So what would you, through a Disinfolklore lens, propose as far as advocacy? What would be the best as far as fighting them online? That disinfo, in Poland, there's the orange alternative, right, where they use those painted orange dwarves, the little gnomes that were anti-communist, to cover up the spots where authorities, were painting over the anti-government graffiti. But what do you think would be best in dismantling this horrific idiocy that's taken us over?
I think the Epstein this story. So for people who who can't think abstractly about the president exercising what he calls executive authority, but beyond his powers, and in areas with all of these crazy executive orders, and then creating the facts on the ground before anyone can do anything, and the law can catch up. This has this visceral materialization in people's minds of this horrific stuff, which we're not, there's the other island, Great St. James. Let's talk about dungeons, and I expect murder, and then the individuals involved in it, and the manifestation of cover up, and the disgust, which I talked about last week, which was the Pizzagate scandal. Although I got it wrong, the deputy director, or the outgoing deputy director of the FBI, he didn't start the Pizzagate scandal. It was someone else, but he did promote the troll about the stolen election in 2020, and he was part of that hinterland. But I think the disgust which they managed to attach to Hillary Clinton as a result of the Pizzagate scandal, which is this emotion of disgust attached to pizzas and done quite purposefully. I think most of us, the more you look into this, and I don't advise anyone to look into it except because it has this potential, the disgust which people are beginning to register, MAGA people, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene, it seems genuinely, and you can understand it's genuine. And we're at the beginning of this in terms of the breach of the law, which was passed unanimously by the Senate and only one dissenting, I think, in the Senate. So the Transparency Act, that everything just had to be released, this mantra which Donald got elected on, and then they've redacted it, and the absolute. I mean, I take Michael Cohen's judgment on this today, which is how much of this is how much of the mess, the absolute mess they have made of the release of these documents with half-assed redactions or redactions which can just be copy and pasted away, and one document not revealed, but the other document which is revealed reveals the existence of all the other documents, and then other documents which reveal there's millions of them, and they're from the sovereign district of New York, from the southern district of Miami, Palm Beach. There's just so much that the law requires them to release. And so if people can't understand abstractly what happened on Jan 6th and what happened with the immunity decision in the federal Jan 6th case, giving Donald personal immunity for acts inside the which are within his office official powers, his official acts, but no one else has immunity. And these were very important things to me as a lawyer, and someone who likes constitutions and sees the fragility of the brittleness of our society. But now they have this kind of like a show and tell case, which is involving children and crimes and cover up, which is so obvious to people. It's in the redaction of these documents. I loved that meme, which I've shared a lot, where you've got President Zelensky in the White House, and then you have Trump and what's his name's face, Vance's face, redacted. So if you're asking what strategies, I think there's enough material in this to destroy MAGA and to create so much disgust for everything they have done. If people can't get disgust for the threatening to invade Canada or Greenland, or I think they can in this. So I'm hopeful that we're in the end game now. So I guess focusing on this horrid incident and trying to bring about more transparency, it's something Republicans and Democrats agree with. It will have a positive impact on Ukraine. It will bring down Vance. It'll just attach that, like, everyone is implicated in it, and there will be enough leaks because there's so many thousands of lawyers and career lawyers from the time of the Biden administration, but they couldn't release it because Ghislaine Maxwell, her prosecution was still going on. There's so much scope for documents to be leaked. So that's so memes and stuff about all of that. And this is from someone I paid no attention to the Epstein scandal. I hated how people were citing Israel and all of this stuff about foreign intelligence services, when it turns out from 1996 onwards, when the first report to the FBI was made about him, it has been a cover-up by powerful people and institutions in the United States. This is the scandal. And it is now so clear to everyone that, in a way, that they didn't seem to care about Jan 6th in the end, or Donald immunity, or tariffs, or all of this other stuff that is on all of our minds. But this thing has, because everyone has a family, everyone knows children, and it's so disgusting, the whole thing, including the cover-up, that I think it will mark all of these people forever. That's my.
I guess my worry, though. What do you think of this? I guess my worry is that as Republicans, see right now, that this is starting to take them down and dismantle them. Possibly that, or Trump, blood clot wins, natural causes wins, and Trump is deceased. Whatever it is, he's either pushed out or he's not around. And Vance is not directly implicated. We still have a problem on our hands, and that's why I was thinking of a clever disinfo campaign.
I think Vance will be implicated. I mean, because he's implicated in the cover-up. So as we always know, it's always the cover-up which gets them in the end. And this is what they're everyone. Well, I'm still an optimist, obviously an idealist. Everyone will
But
have to
a rational brain.
Well, this is where the disgust comes in. So with Hillary Clinton, it wasn't about rationality. They managed to connect in the brains of people, even neutrals or independents, the idea that she was somehow involved in child sex thing. And so that every time they saw her face, that's the image that came into it. And that is my great hope. There's more. That was a very daring strategy, and it worked. And it was invisible to people like me who just thought the whole thing was ridiculous. But it seems a lot simpler to attach disgust to all of these people, all of these men now, including Vance, who aren't putting a line in the sand. And that's what motivated the senators. That I didn't predict they were going to vote for this act. Chuck Schumer's his greatest moment, really. Like, no one, I don't know, did you see this coming? But that probably shows the power of this, and that's even before seeing the documents and this absolute mess they've made of releasing them. That those Republicans clearly felt they had to do this, otherwise they wouldn't survive. And now it's been done in such a cack-handed way. But yeah, I obviously. We'll see, but I think this is the biggest thing ever, like in the century, ever. What is coming out on this stuff, and we're only getting hints of what more there is on it. We just thought of his house and him and a few rich guys, but there's there's other stuff which is being hinted at by some of the survivors. So that's what. But I'll think about your question onwards. I'm going to have to go, but thank you very much for this, and I'll listen later.
Thank you, Decoding, very much for those answers. Yeah, J.D. Vance. Well, he is probably one of the least popular people in the United States. So it's amazing he got elected. But Ohio, unfortunately, is a red state. And it's been, highly gerrymandered. So it's tough. It's a tough thing to break out of that kind of trap. So it's, but this national election, we'll see. I don't think it'll go well for him, but I'm not sure that our election will go well for all of us because it's not the voting, it's the counting. And I do worry very much about that. I'm not sure about the last time, which I know this is what Timothy Snyder warned us about, is that we would become distrustful of our own election processes. And I admit it. Okay, so but this is good stuff. I think that the other thing that we missed the boat on was all of the chances to get this in the prevention mode. We're now in sort of replying to all of this stuff. I've long held that this is just a case where we're never going to see all of this stuff released. I hope that we do, but I think that these are wow. I don't know what percentage of the billionaires on Earth that are in there, but they're awfully powerful ones who are in those files, and they rest in the hands of. The compromat rests in the hand of Putin right now. He's got all that stuff, according to Craig Unger, who wrote the book on that, and I believe that makes it very difficult for people to release this. Trump can't possibly let his little cronies release this. So if it comes from other places, that's great. Will they be clipped and blocked from being released or being seen in the media? quite possibly. Look at 60 Minutes CCOT prison episode that was, ABC said, no, we're not going to show this. And now there's a bias monitor that's going to be assigned to ABC because, a bias monitor, some merger thing. Bias. Okay. So I think that there's still a very real risk. So everybody has to push their Congress people. And I think if enough American politicians really want to maintain who we are and what we do, which is we're a free people who have individual rights, and we have built on that over many generations now, then we are going to have to defend the structure of international law because it is woven into our Constitution by our signing all of these agreements, international agreements. And if we back out of that stuff, the whole thing crumbles with it, our Constitution. And we're already seeing some of that in all of the kind of, you can't call it fluff, but I will, that goes with America, like the anthem wasn't played recently by the president. You haven't heard it at any of his official ceremonies. He's kind of washing all this stuff out. And it's so sad to see. But there we are, Wendy.
Most definitely. We're in the United States here. We're in a difficult time. Again, apologies to the rest of the world, everybody out there. We really need our elected officials to push back against the fascism that is being imposed by the Trump regime. And I sincerely hope it's coming. We do our best to push them in that direction, and there seems to be movement that way. I did want to clarify something that Decoding mentioned, was that the United States has sanctioned a number of European officials, and their crime is monitoring Russian disinformation on social media. So this Trump administration has sanctioned European individuals who are not even restricting, they're just monitoring Russian disinformation on social media in Europe, not even in the United States. And they have sanctioned them supposedly because they're restricting free speech. As we all know, the United States dismantled our own monitoring of Russian and other disinformation as soon as the Trump regime came into power, and now they are trying to put pressure on Europe for maintaining theirs. And this is really alarming. It's disgusting, and we need to act on this.
Indeed, we do. We really should, and this is something that's very healthy for us. But the trillionaire, that who I mean, the $1 trillion man, he's got probably a large stake in also hiding things. And this, you told us this, Decoding, that the platform that we work in now is number one on the list of sources of disinformation, with an outstanding 80% of the disinformation found on social media. I believe that was report number 2 from, I forget what agency it was in Europe, but wow. And so this is valuable to Trump. It's valuable to anybody who is one of his cronies, who is probably engaged and has engaged in crimes under the definition of our laws, and so who have all their interest is behind, shutting this stuff down. And so they're trying to use these sanctions, and it makes no sense. And I think it is way past time for the United States Congress to say, we're the ones who decide what's going to be done, because we're most proximal to the people, being representatives and senators. And it is up to the president to do what we say. and we have given everything over. I shouldn't say we. Some number of people think it's better to have a unitary president. In other words, all the power rests with him. I think that's entirely wrong. It's against our Constitution. It's pretty clearly laid out there, and we have to save it or we're going to wear it. And I don't want to wear it that way because, I do not want any of my friends from who are at the edge of our communities to end up in one of those prisons like the CCOT prison, which by all accounts is horrible. 40,000 people in that is what they're capable of. And, in our own little flotilla of prisons that we've got, we've already had 30 deaths. And as Timothy Snyder said, 30 deaths in concentration camps in America. It's pretty startling to put it that way, but it is, I think, a good reflection of what's going on.
What's worse is this happened in the last Trump administration. The same kind of horrendous prison conditions and treatment of people in those, and horrendous treatment of children, and we did it again. We put this guy in power again. I'm just at a loss for why we would tolerate this.
It is astounding.
Again.
One of the things, again, and one of the things that is amazing to me is that the people they've been arresting have, on average, have less outstanding crimes in the United States. So these aren't these dangerous people that they've talked about deporting. These are people who, the people arresting them have more arrests on them than the people that get arrested. And why would they do that? Isn't that going against what they say? Well, those people who stay and who continue to commit crimes in the United States stir up a huge amount of resentment, and that is beneficial for them because it just it keeps the wheel spinning the way that those people want. So it's very disturbing. It's a good reason to call our senators. It's also a good reason for some of the pro-Ukraine bills to be rewritten without an option for the president. Now, I don't know exactly where the legal line is on that, but if you say, and Trump can do this at his leisure, he's not going to do it. He's not going to give back that Russian money until the Congress says, give back that Russian money. And then if it goes to the president and he defeats it, well, okay, that says something about Congress, because Congress can chicken out and not have enough people to push that through. But we should not leave anything to the president's discretion at this point. In other administrations, I might go, I don't care. But in this case, we have the worst of the worst here. A man who is walking into his own bunker. Anyways.
Well, James, since this is a Ukraine space, shall we take a look at some news related to Ukraine?
Yes, absolutely. It is, and we should. I put everything that you had into replies to the space, since we don't have I don't see a purple pill, at least. Maybe other people see the purple pill, but I had to go back out to the timeline and paste it into the timeline. Just FYI, Wendy and everybody. So if anybody's looking for this stuff, if you're listening later on Spotify, and you also are still in Twitter, you can go look up those tweets if you want to. So anyways, but Paula, I see you have your hand up. So Wendy, do you have anything to say before we go to Paula?
No, let's go to Paula.
Oh.
Welcome, Paula.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I think the Republican Party only went along with it because they thought in this way, they could have back the administration. And I think they didn't foresee what would happen. That is what I think. But I don't know, maybe. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Paula. It does make me wonder how you take people who are like number 99 on the list of candidates that you might think of. You know, you got all these people's resumes and you pick that guy who's maybe not even in the top 500 of people who could do the job. And they're getting these jobs in the administration, and Republicans passed all those people. So to me, that raises a red flag about that. I'm not sure, Paula, but in the first administration, I did not like many of the people in the Trump administration, and some of them were just as openly kind of pro-Russia. One of them got the Russian Star or something like that, Tillerson or something like that. Anyways, but he was a very talented guy who had a lot of knowledge about the topics, and he did use it to kind of wreck things, but he was eligible in terms of his quality. So I hear what you're saying. That actually may be the reason why. But on the other hand, if you've got a unitary president and you like that, then do you really need these guys to be that spiffy, or is it just all going to rest on the shoulders of one guy? Which, in that case, that's crazy. Well, at least I do, because he's not so talented himself, except in certain things. Wendy, what do you think?
Well, before we move on to Ukraine, I just want to say I'm personally not so kindly disposed as Paula toward the Republican Party. They facilitated this. They are right now the leadership of the House and Senate. They allowed it. They approved people for administrative positions who are obviously associated with Russia and who were highly unqualified for their positions. So I'm not so kindly disposed as Paula. I think that they're complicit and that they're spineless cowards that don't have the guts to stand up to him when he goes further than even they approve of, but they let him do it anyway. So I'm not so kindly disposed. I am praying for a huge Republican defeat in the midterms because I don't see anything good coming from the current leadership. But that's my opinion.
Yes, I do agree, and I still think that one of the best things that we can do. I like analogies. Sometimes they're very useful. So I'm just going to say, if you haven't seen the movie, It's a Wonderful Life, there's a guardian angel that is trying to take care of this guy who's trying to make. He's a good guy. He's trying to make a difference, but he wants to kill himself for the insurance money for his family. And so what does the what does the angel do? He jumps into the river, so that George, rather than jumping in to drown himself, jumps in to save that man. And so I see a parallel between that and the United States efforts to save Ukraine, our efforts to save Ukraine, and it will, if we're successful, it will undermine certain forces, and the biggest supporters of the people that we're troubled with in the United States, their support will be majorly undermined. So I think that we should focus on that positive. I don't want to stir up negativity against the GOP in general. I want to be specific and say, this person and that person have made these troubling statements. There are some very good. I think that John Husted from Ohio is a very good senator, and there's any number of Republicans. But I appreciate the truth of what you're saying, but I'd like to, number one, say, let's focus on what we can do that really, in the long run, it helps us by helping Ukraine. And number two, let's give the ones who haven't made awful statements yet a break. Pick on the ones. But I completely agree that, in the large scale, especially when you pull back the lens and look at the bigger picture, that's true. But what I think we need to, and I was reminded by someone last week in this same show in the back channel, so I should say in messages, that I need to be careful about using a wide brush to paint people. And I don't want to do that, because I think about Don Bacon, um, uh, Mr. Wicker, and any number of other people who are eventually all in for Ukraine. So I celebrate that. And I think we should thank them just as we would our own Democrat. If you got a Democrat person, thank them for what they do for Ukraine. And you can do it right here, on Twitter, which isn't a bad thing. It may even be better than an email to them. So, phone call's probably best, but an email's good. And so is this. If you tag them in a tweet and tell them what you want, that's pretty good. But really, the way to get registered officially is making a phone call. Those and emails are the two kind of official things that get tallied for counts, and oftentimes those counts will move votes in the Congress. So yeah, but I do appreciate it. In general, it's like, darn it, GOP, I appreciate why you think what you do and so many things, but this is too much, too much. So, and I would say that to the people who are on the far left as well. Some of those things are too much, and they meet around the back, the horseshoe theory, and that So we really have to be, at least my sense is, let's pick on people individually. But Wendy, at the same time, you're right. So anyway, where do you want to start? We got a bunch of stuff in the nest, and I barely started putting any of mine in there.
Well, yeah, they're not in any particular order, but we can start going through things. I saw that you put that version of Shedrick by the various councils of different countries, and that's fabulous. I thought about putting that one there. It is Christmas Eve, so it's good to have some of the positive. So maybe we can go over the general news and then talk a little bit about some of the more positive aspects of the season.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think there's so much news. Any way you look at it, there's just so much news to talk about from Ukraine. Let me get this one into the nest, and then I can talk about it. I can talk about it as I do it. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Let's see. This one I just found interesting. Noel reports newly deployed troops from Russia's 82nd Motorized Rifle Regiment have released a video expressing outrage at their command. They claim that they are being sent on missions with near suicidal odds, describing positions controlled by Ukraine as fortresses, and stating that only half of those sent return alive. So, good job, Ukraine. Sorry for you, Russia. You are, at least this time, aiming your complaints in the right direction rather than shooting at Ukrainians. You ought to be pointing those guns somewhere else. Back to you.
Definitely, orcs go home. I did not put it in the nest, but there is a video circulating of Russians' conversations with their loved ones back home, talking about the horrible things they've done to civilians, and how the people on the other end of the phone in Russia egg them on, saying, well, kill them all, they deserve it, they're the enemy, are they even human, things like that. So my sympathy meter for the Russian invaders is pretty low. But yes, it's great that they are focusing back on their commanders, who are putting them in conditions where they have a very good chance of being killed. I think 50% is kind of low these days. So maybe they have better commanders than some, but good on them. Just go home.
One way or the other, in a box or not, go home. And if you stay, don't forget your sunflower seeds, folks. Yeah, don't forget those, because we want to see them blooming over that enriched soil. So yeah, there's that. I feel sorry for the Russian horses. Anyway.
Yes and no. I mean, you see images. There's one going around right now of a Russian soldier handcuffed in a transport vehicle so he can't run away. That is kind of sad. That is at least one Russian who is not going willingly to his death. Also, there are many Ukrainians in occupied areas who have been forced to fight for the Russian side. I have some sympathy for them, but that's it. If you came to kill people for money to another country, no sympathy.
I hear you. Forced or not, it's not where our sympathy, our feelings should go to. It should be for the victim. We've heard enough from Donald Trump saying, "Oh, 10,000 people or 7,000 people, a week die." Well, you know who the bulk of those are, and that's why he says it that way. He doesn't differentiate the defender and the aggressor. And we do that, so I'm glad that we do that. Jane Key, very good. I was incisive comments. This one, I really did get disturbed by this, and I did not know about this, but so he's got a headline saying 90% of Israel's wheat supply by Russia using stolen Ukrainian grain. So during the Gaza war, Russia's share of Israel's wheat imports surged from to 89% from 39%, becoming a key supplier, partly using harvest stolen from occupied Ukraine. This is indeed disappointing. I would hope that, the two countries of Israel and Ukraine seems like they should be better buddies and not backstab the other. And I think this is one of these kind of treacherous things that go on between the leadership. Zelensky and Bibi probably have spoken quite a number of times and worked out some things, but this is one of these things like, Zelensky's probably saying, "Damn it, stop this, just stop it, buy it from us, stop, because this is killing Ukrainians indirectly. It's the money that goes back to Russia that keeps the wheels spinning on the machine of, Russia's war-making tools, and it's just a shame. I'm so sad to see this, and maybe AIPAC doesn't even know about this, but AIPAC. That's another place to push back, is to say, AIPAC, you got to talk to Israel and get them to stop doing this. Anyways, back to you.
Thanks, James. Another story on a better note is that Sweden will start training Ukrainian pilots on the Gripen. As we know, Sweden has promised Ukraine a number of Gripen airplanes, and training is due to start. Some say that there has been some training going on in the background for quite some time. Let's hope so. But the official start of training on the Gripen is happening, and as was reported in the last couple days, F-16s which many said were not going to be useful to Ukraine, have been incredibly instrumental in shooting down Russian missiles. I believe the other day it was F-16s that shot down 34 out of 35 missiles. So they've been incredibly useful and saved countless lives. So an addition of Gripens to the Ukrainian Air Force will be very, very helpful, and the sooner it happens, the better.
Oh yes, and and the other thing here is that for Ukraine to actually win the war on the ground, at some point they're going to have to do a lot more maneuver warfare or whatever it is that's going to enable them to take a lot of land back without losing many soldiers. And by everybody's expertise that I've heard, they all pretty much agree. Air power is one of the keys to doing that. So I'm glad that it's maybe a mess in terms of having another aircraft join your fleet, a different type. But the Gripen sounds like an ideal addition based on all the things that we heard about it from that wonderful space that Jenny in Midwest fella did, talking about it, how it's it's something that can land in shorter airfields that can be refueled even while the engine's running. It's designed to get a lot of turnarounds, to be easily fixed, so that even a conscript, can go in and fix what needs fixing. And I think that's a really powerful motive for Ukraine, because, they're not going to have a huge amount of overwhelm, like a 2-to-1 or anything like that, advantage in the sky, probably. But as they get more aircraft than the Russians, this kind of capacity to land even closer to the front line, potentially where there are no airfields, refuel, reload, and go shoot something else. That's going to be a huge advantage for Ukraine. So I'm glad that this is coming about, and it's just, well, anyways, no regrets about the past, because that won't do any good, will it?
Agreed. And yes, we've seen a lot of positive news about the Ukrainian Air Force increasing in numbers, and the Ukrainians decreasing the number of Russian planes. There was that spectacular image of two Ukrainian saboteurs entering the cockpits of two airplanes at Belbek airfield in Crimea and lighting them on fire, and then just casually leaving. So they were able to get away with it without any resistance, which was wonderful. Also, Russian planes are falling apart, due to lack of maintenance and overuse. So there are also accidents that happen that aren't directly caused by Ukraine. So the number of their airplanes and other kind of air support are decreasing while Ukrainians are gaining in power. And that's really excellent news.
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
I was going to go on to the next story, unless you have more in this one.
No, I'll leave it there. Go ahead.
Okay. Noel reports indicates that Ukrainian soldiers say the most effective defense against fiber optic FPV drones remains the combo of a Safari shotgun and a Ptashka net launcher. If the drone survives buckshot, it's caused by a 4x4 meter net fired up to 30 meters. So these are defenses that Ukrainians trying to do vehicular transport are using against FPV drones. As you know, the electronic warfare doesn't work against fiber optic drones. And there's been a lot of shotgun training happening. We are conducting a fundraiser for shotgun training by Ivan Bear and his daughter Sasha. They've come to talk to us multiple times, and they are going around the front lines and doing training, and also training civilians and military people at their shooting club in Kyiv. So also we had on the as a guest not long ago Carl Larson, who runs a couple of charities related to Ukraine, and they too are funding shotgun training by various people in Ukraine. So this has become a very effective way of dealing with fiber optic drones, to just shoot buckshot at them and hope something hits. And as it says in the article, if the buckshot doesn't get them, you can have a net launcher that will take the drone down. Back to you, James.
I am stuffing our so-called purple pill, so off screen. Well, yeah, this is fantastic to see these things be so effective. And watching them do it, I wouldn't say it looks easy at all, but it looks doable, especially the net thing. But either way, a shotgun, you got a pretty good spread there. In the nets, obviously. What is it, like a 3-meter spread, I think it was? Yeah, you have a very good chance of shooting these things down if you've got some timing worked out on these. So I'm glad of it. Yeah, well, we'll see how this goes. I wonder what is next in that field. I'm sure they'll come up with other new things. So let's see here. I wanted to go to the numbers, which are somewhere in the nest, and the numbers. The one thing I really want to focus on is about the Russian drones, and the reason I am so interested in this, it's over 1,000, and to me, that strikes me as maybe close to a record. I don't know, and I haven't had a chance to go to Ragnar's page to look at his, his stuff, which is always interesting. But 1,031 drones or UAVs, and that is a lot of shoot down. And I imagine that means that Russia fired some more than that, but probably they hit about 90% or more. I don't know, haven't looked that up. But while I'm at it, I will go through the rest of the numbers because. And I'll start with the always interesting quote of the day, which is from William Shakespeare. It is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves. So, anyways, so this is a big day. It's sort of one of those big number days. 1,090 eliminated Russian personnel, and the total there is 1,200,370. So we've tipped that number again, which is a sign. It's like a milestone along the way, and I expect that this could speed up even more, so we may not have to wait long. Tanks 3, armored fighting vehicles 4, artillery systems 45, multiple launch rocket systems 3, cruise missiles 34, and vehicles and fuel trucks 159. So all in all, thank you, defenders of Ukraine, for the work that you have to do. It's ugly work, but you guys are doing an exceptional job of it.
100%. They are doing amazing work with the resources they have, and thankfully those resources are ever increasing thanks to their friends and allies in Europe and some other parts of the world. Unfortunately, not the United States at the moment. And we hit that milestone of 1,200,000 casualties, which is that's a lot. That's a whole lot of people that have been eliminated.
Putin said it would take 2
Sean,
million people, 2 million people to stop him. That's what he said. I don't know. I think he could go on forever if he had the troops for it. But it's interesting to think that, in time it will it will come to this probably, or it possibly, I should say, come to 2 million eliminated personnel on the Russian sides, which is what they can count, by the way. Just a reminder about that. What we don't see counted are the people that die of disease. Now, Russia is not so good at military hospital stuff. They don't do it very well at all. A lot of people die because of the conditions that they're in. Wounds aren't properly treated. They come with diseases like AIDS and other things that get spread. And so the daily numbers are a reflection of who the Ukraine forces destroyed, not necessarily all these other, ways that they die. And so it's a larger number than this. And so it's no wonder that the unemployment rate is so low. It's so low, they're in a lot of trouble because they can't get enough people hired. And people don't want to work for nothing, Wendy. That's the other thing that is kind of funny about Russia's situation. It's kind of funny because it's happening to them.
that's true, and don't forget the number of Russian troops killed by their own people, either their commanders or their compatriots. I don't think the Ukrainians count those, so that adds to it. So that 1,200,000 is likely to be quite low, which is just fine. And yes, Russia is importing a lot of people to work from places like India, but considering their economic situation, we'll see how long they're able to pay those people, and whether those people will stay or be forced to stay. We'll see what happens there.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see. So this one, it's interesting, sort of back to America, but not really. This is Jane Keefe, who's saying the Putin regime is boasting of not only capturing the U.S. government, but now weaponizing it to attack Europe. And so he's got a picture of a tweet from Kirill Dmitriev, and it says, wow. So is Ursula von der Leyen now leading the censorship blacklist of people barred from entering the U.S.? And that is a quote tweet leading to this one from Rubio. For far too long, ideologues in Europe have led organized efforts to coerce American platforms to punish American viewpoints they oppose. The Trump administration will no longer tolerate these egregious acts of extraterritorial censorship. Now, my understanding is that this is, about the non-release of information from Twitter in particular. And they got fined for that. I think it was $144 million chicken feed, right, for the U.S. But this is something that other countries put up with, and why they want to count it, why they want to look at this, is they are taking disinformation seriously in Europe and trying to defend against it. And this is what Marco Rubio is complaining about. Is this what we have been, and Cece even asked about? How are we going to defend against this disinformation? Well, in the United States, we're going to give up and surrender to it if they have their way in D.C.
That's true. The Trump administration succeeded in getting elected and continues to use disinformation. So disinformation is their lifeblood. But trying to impose policing disinformation, or at least tracking disinformation, trying to impose their lack of morality and values regarding truthfulness on the rest of Europe is pretty reprehensible. So let's hope that Europe stands up to it and they fail utterly. Can I go on to a one of the more spectacular booms of the day?
Oh, please. In fact, go on with a string of them. That will give me some time to post some more of the ones I haven't posted yet.
Okay, I'll go through some of the things I put in the nest. One of the more spectacular things is one in the nest is posted by OSCE Technical. It says Ukrainian attack drones reportedly just hit one of Russia's oldest and largest rubber factories, the Efremov synthetic rubber plant. And there are some pretty spectacular images, and it's good. You know, this rubber material is used in the manufacture of military items. So anything that slows that down or makes it more difficult or more expensive for the Russians is a positive thing. Secondly, another interesting boom was that, you know, we heard yesterday that in Moscow somebody ran up to a police car, I believe it was at nighttime, and tossed an incendiary device, an explosive device, into that police car and ran away, killing 2 police officers and injuring several others. And the Ukrainian HUR has stated that 2 of those police officers, at least the ones killed, were involved in the torture of Ukrainian prisoners. So much like that general that they eliminated in Moscow earlier in the week, here are some more people who have harmed Ukrainians who are have been eliminated. As many people say, you know, none of them are safe. None of those people are safe. They may get away with it in the short term, but they're not going to get away with it in the long term. Another bit of news is Ukraine says it hit a storage and maintenance site for marine drones in Mirny, West Crimea, near Yevpatoria. So the Ukrainians have struck that as well. Let me do a little scrolling here and get some of the booms. At least there was another oil facility of some kind that was hit as well. And then there's drone footage coming out on some of the strikes on some of these Russian Shadow Fleet tankers. That's worth taking a look at. And that is all the booms, at least that I have in the nest. James, do you want to comment on anything?
Boom, boom, boom. I like all those booms. They're happening in Russia, so I'm all for those. Let's see if I missed. I got a few of those myself. Let's see if I duplicated them entirely. This happens, doesn't it? And so let's see here. Okay, yeah, this one. Let's see. I wanted to talk about this. It's not exactly a boom, but police officers accused of torturing Ukrainian POWs were blown up in Moscow. So it is. Yeah, it is a small boom, but it's an important boom. And I think this might be the same one that you're talking about. So these are maybe not as
Yes.
important, and yeah, so not exactly as important as the general, but well worth the black plastic bag for them. Anyways, let's see. That's probably not a nice thing to say. Anyhow, yeah. And then I also found, this one, I just love this one. There is a picture up here it's from Ragnar Gudmundsson, who does all of these daily reports on the numbers and gives us trends and things like that and records and all of it. And so he has been a very valuable kind of support to anybody who's in a pro-Ukraine space. And there is a picture of Zelensky, him in the middle, Ragnar that is, and Putin, and they're all looking at the screen. And the tweet says, "Showed Zelensky and Putin my dashboard. Oh, Putin was nicer than I thought. Immediately offered me a seat by the window and a cup of tea." Yeah, so
Lovely.
I
Absolutely
really
lovely.
I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. So anyway, uh, what can I say? I do go for the humor. Sometimes I can't stay away from it. I've been kind of chuckling. So yeah, it's a Merry Christmas day. So I like that. That kind of added to my joviality and happiness. So anyhow, I saw that somebody requested speaker. But you want to go on, or do
That
you want to?
was that was Lexicon.
That was
So
the
if you
someone.
have any if you have any Lexicon, if you have any comments of where we're at so far, otherwise we'll continue going over some of the news items of the day. All right, I guess not. Do you want to continue, or shall I? I have a few kind of not so good news of booms that actually affected Ukraine. But did you want to go over anything before we start on that?
Yes, one. Okay, it's not exactly big news. It's a reply to a source, another source about some things, and all it says is in this tweet. And thank you, Dawn Stacy, for this. A bad day for Russia is a good day for humanity. I just wanted to put that in the nest for us to contemplate that indeed, when imperialism stops, then we're better off. When we have more representative democracies, it really is a good day for humanity. So, yeah, let's go about helping Ukraine do away with imperialism.
Absolutely. All right. Well, one item I have is we all know that a couple of days ago, in Odessa, the Russians hit a ship carrying sunflower oil. It's wonderful stuff. I use it all the time. I order genuine Ukrainian sunflower oil to use in my cooking at home. Anyway, this ship full of sunflower oil was damaged, and unfortunately, dead seabirds are washing up on Odessa beaches. I guess, even consumable oils can be deadly in the way that fuel oils can be by causing a giant slick on the top of the water. And this has affected seabirds, which is really unfortunate. So they are working on cleaning up the oil spill from this hit on the ship. It was delayed by a couple of days, the cleanup efforts, because of Russian shelling. As we all know, that Odessa's been under constant attack from Russia for the last several days. It seems to be calming down, thank goodness. But this hampered efforts to clean up this oil spill. And I saw Genesis Man come up, and now he's gone. Do you see him, James?
I see a trend in that. Lexicon is a listener again. Genesis Man is a listener again. I suspect that the thumb slides over the request to speak button very easily, especially when you're tired, from partying all night. That's what I'm suspecting. And along those lines, I just want to mention something that I tried for the first time. I think you were there listening, Wendy, about the kvass, this liquor. It's pretty weak. It's 1.5% alcohol. And I thought it was so dark because the bottle it came in was so dark. It's actually very light colored. It's not like see through or anything like that. It's from a black currant is what the basis of it. It's fizzy, but not super fizzy like a foamy beer or anything like that. And it was absolutely delicious, and it smelled like strawberry jam or something like that. And I loved it. And now I know that I'm going to go out to the store, Jungle Jim's International Market outside of Cincinnati, and I am going to get more of that. I'm going to help Ukraine in yet another way. Yes, I am. I'm going to help their economy. So anyway, maybe that's my way of admitting that I probably need a 12-step program anyway. But no, I don't. Not really. Just kidding. Anyway.
Is that the stuff Robin said tastes like bread in a bottle?
She did say that, which
Your description doesn't sound like that at all.
Not at all. Not at all. No. I can see how if it didn't have, if it was based on something else besides fruit, then I think it could be blah. But with this, and as Lexicon mentioned yesterday, the sweetness of it and that smell is fantastic. It's wonderful, and it was suggested that I maybe mix that with a good porter, which I think it might be a good idea. But I haven't had to go to the porter yet because it's all by itself. It's really good, and the good thing with a 1.5% alcohol content, I'm still safe from myself with that kind of low alcohol. It's delicious. Anyway, little did I know. And while I was there too, I stocked up on a bunch of Ukrainian chocolates and cookies and things like that for gifts this year. Usually I make oatmeal cookies, and they're very good. I make good oatmeal cookies. Lots of chocolate and all kinds of nuts and seeds in there. But this time I said, no, I'm gonna be lazy, gonna spend. So I did. Anyway, Wendy, I don't think you're ever gonna get to Jungle Jim's, but yeah, it is a very interesting store. Anyway, back to you.
I don't know. One of my best friends lives not far from you, so maybe someday. I know that there's not a lot available where I live in terms of markets where they have Ukrainian goods. There is one store about 20 miles away that carries some Ukrainian and Polish and Russian things. I did go there one time, but it's run by Russian people, which I know not all of them are bad, but I hesitate to give anybody Russian some money, so I haven't gone back there, and I wish there was more close by. So good for you that you have a place nearby where you can get some of those things.
Yep, I'm lucky that way. So yeah, and the beer that I got, the porter is from Poland, and it is heavy duty. It is the one that is dark. You can't really see through it in a bottle, even a clear bottle, and it also is popular because it's $2.49 for a 16-ounce bottle. That's unheard of for beer that's 9% alcohol. And okay, I am a cheap drunk, I guess. So, and that's why I like it. So, anyway, one of the reasons I like the flavor, even the kind of iron taste in it. So, I think I'm repeating myself from last night, but thought you might be interested in that one as well. So, mixing those two together, Polish and Ukrainian liquors, might be a good thing. A way to settle peace. I don't know, whatever. Mix it together, drink it, and then, maybe you can make a just peace deal there. I know that they're arguing about things there, and I hope liquor helps them with that. Anyways, Wendy, I'm getting silly. and I haven't even been drinking this morning.
Well, I did make my own Eastern European style liqueur. It's something found across many parts of Eastern Europe, including Ukraine. It's a brandy liqueur. I took some of my own plums that we grow here. We have what's called a Santa Rosa plum, and I tried it with wild plums. You soak them in brandy for a long time and add sugar and a couple of spices, and it makes something very sweet and very delicious. So I have my own liqueurs that I make to honor our friends in Eastern Europe, including Ukraine. Okay. I wanted to talk about some of the not so great things that happened overnight, because we should report that as well. The Russians did a huge attack on Ukraine two nights ago. Last night was relatively calm in comparison, at least, but there was a hit on a 9-story residential building in Chernihiv, and it's quite a large fire. Curse the Russians for that one. And also there was another big strike on a residential area in Zaporizhia. So that is also injured and killed some people. And the Ukrainians have put up with this every night, almost every day. There are civilians killed or injured, or just losing their homes, surviving but losing their homes due to Russian drone attacks, despite the best and often heroic efforts of Ukrainian air defense. Some things still get through, and that's something to remember as we go into this season. James, back to you.
Indeed. The defense of Ukraine is extraordinary. I think that the capacity of Russia to continue to produce these weapons is really because they have a partner in crime, and that is China, who delivers all the components. And unfortunately, there are many U.S. companies and other Western quote unquote Western companies who also are willing to ship components that turn out, to be components for weapon systems. And I think they have to know where this is going. I know there's a lawsuit against 3 major companies in the United States because they have not taken the care to make sure that they know who their customers are and what is happening with their products. And so, there's a lot of culpability here. And people don't care because, when it comes to stock companies that are corporations, they don't really care. It's about the bottom line. It's about the value of the stock. It's about the profit margins. And it's also about the bonuses that the leadership get, which is now about, if not 100 to 1 in terms of the ratio of the line worker to these people that sit on the board or the president of the company. It's in some cases it's approaching that or more than that. So there's a lot of greed, and it drives kind of ignoring this. And I understand the profit motive, and I understand wanting to have more money, but I do not want to rob somebody with a gun to get it. And I feel like that's what's happening here. So this is a shame, but Ukraine is doing an extraordinary job. I mean, over 1,000 drones being fired into Ukraine. That's stunning. And how many, let's see, back during the YES summit, that was the Yalta European summit, or whatever it was called. I think it was YES. Anyways, Zelensky said that he needed 1,400 anti-drone drones every day. And the reason that number was that high was because it takes more than one anti-drone drone to shoot down these drones. And now it's up over 1,000. So that number has probably gone up. I haven't heard any recent statements from him about that, or anybody from Ukraine about how many they need now. But that is a number that Russia is trying to increase every day because they're turning out more missiles and more drones and planning to increase that essentially as long as they can. So this is a tough fight for Ukraine. They're doing a wonderful job, but some of these things are going to get not ours, but can get through. So I hope that the people who do support Ukraine speed it up, and that money is front loaded as much as possible, so that the factories that are needed to be built to increase Ukraine's own capacity to develop more of what they need. It's all front loaded, and that way, this war is going to come to an end sooner for all of those kind of efforts. And in the meantime, there's things that we can do. We can, of course, give to all of the fundraisers that are in the nest. We can also be good citizens and tell our reps what to do. And they don't have to do it, or they have the right not to do it. But in this case, the moral case is so clear. And we should also be giving them, I don't know how to say it kindly, a lot of shit for the bad decisions that they make. We should call them out individually for the bad decisions that we make. So you should know who your two senators and your representative is in the United States. And likewise, in the country that you live in, I hope you guys know who they are and that you get in the habit of contacting them. In the United States, the Ukraine Action Summit group says these are times when we need to call or write twice a week. I have not been doing that much, honestly, but that's because there's so many alarm bells ringing about what's happening in the United States or to the United States. Support for Ukraine, it is diminishing. It's crumbling, unfortunately. So anyway, Wendy, I don't know what else to say about that. Back to
you. Okay, thank you, James. One kind of sobering statistic that I wanted to bring up in conjunction with what I was saying before was that every 10th home in Ukraine has been damaged by shelling. That means in the entire country, which is rather large in terms of European measurements, about 10% of the country's total housing stock have been destroyed by missiles and artillery. So 10% of the population of Ukraine has been made homeless over time in the course of this war due to missiles and shelling. That's not counting the people who live in occupied areas who've had their homes forcibly taken from them by Russians. So that's something to consider. On the other hand, there is some mixed news on the military front. Most of it good. Did you want to comment on this, James, before I go on to that?
Yep. This, Decoding mentioned that there's another case that's going to come up or is coming up about Russia's bill that they're going to get, and I don't know if you saw it looked like a grocery receipt, but it was like a bill for Russia, and it had listed on it all of the different categories of expenses and some amounts in the billions on each one of those lines. And this guy was holding this from on top of a bridge, and it was kind of dangling down. It was kind of a long list. It was blown up probably to about twice his height. Anyways, this is the reason why the reparations have to be so high. And I guess I understand. I don't agree with, but I understand the chickens that don't want to spend that Russian money without having a judgment against Russia. But that judgment has got to come. So that tribunal is incredibly important. The United States, they should be rewriting the Make Russia Pay bill so that it doesn't give the president any leeway on choosing that. They should just stuff it down his throat and get that thing passed. It's only 8 or 10 million, but maybe Foghorn, Leghorn can get the other chickens moving on that.
100%. All right, I'm going to move on to the bit of military news that we have. The Ukrainians have withdrawn from Seversk, so that city has unfortunately fallen to the Russians. It's been reported, though, that there are some advantageous places for them to withdraw to. That will allow them to continue to inflict heavy casualties on the Russians. The Russians took a lot of casualties in getting Seversk, and they are likely to to suffer more. The two things that are advantageous to the Ukrainians is that there is a river there that they've withdrawn across. And also on the other side of that river, just a couple kilometers away, there are hills. So the Ukrainians can man the high ground across a body of water and attack Russians from that high ground position. The Russians who have infiltrated or taken over the city of Seversk. It's sad that the city has fallen, but hopefully the Ukrainians can get an advantage out of this by continuing to inflict heavy casualties on the people that do invade that city. On the more positive front, even the Russians have conceded that Kupiansk is completely back under Ukrainian control. The few Russians that are left there are pretty much cut off from supply and from other Russian units, and they are steadily being eliminated by the Ukrainians. And if they don't surrender, they will be killed. So that is quite positive news, and also the Ukrainians are pushing more into Russian positions in that area. Another area of positivity is, Pokrovsk stands, and Russians continue to try to push into that area using armor, tanks and armored vehicles and whatever else they can get, including, unfortunately, horses. And every time they try to make these pushes, like around Dobropilya and Pokrovsk and the area around there, they are getting slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered. And again, unfortunately, including horses. I haven't had the strength to look at those videos. I guess I've, now at this point, like most of us, watched thousands of Russian soldiers die, but can't stand to watch a horse die, because I guess it didn't have a choice to be there. So that is some of what's going on. So Ukrainian forces are overcoming Russian forces in many areas, and holding back huge numbers of Russians forced into the meat grinder and inflicting heavy casualties. And that is good news.
Yes, I imagine that those horses would be conscientious objectors if such a thing was possible in Russia, but it's not. So off they go, like many Russians. And but you're right. That's where my sympathy lies. So I have one. This is from the talks that have been going on, the negotiations, the peace of Ukraine, pieces of Ukraine, or is it a peace deal? But this is from Zelensky via Nexta. And I picked this one because it was a little bit more abbreviated. But this is the 20 points that are in the peace plan as it more or less stands now. So here we go. Okay, this was reported by RBC Ukraine, citing the president's remarks at the meeting with journalists. Here's a brief rundown. Ukraine sovereignty not up for discussion. Non-aggression pact with Russia plus monitoring along the front line. Sure, people have noted that heavily. That they don't do that. So it's got to be. That's good. That's a nice start. That's like there's a handshake and a stab in the back. But to prevent the stab in the back, there's more. Anyway, security guarantees. This is the key issue, and they leave it at that. The key issue. Without doing it. Armed Forces of Ukraine, 800,000 troops in peacetime. The U.S., NATO, and Europe provide security guarantees modeled on Article 5. The new Russian invasion any new Russian invasion would trigger a military response and the return of sanctions, which means that sanctions are going to be dropped, I guess. The next point is Russia legally commits to a non-aggression policy toward Ukraine and Europe. Next, Ukraine's EU membership with a fixed date, not sometime in the future, which I think 2027 has been discussed for that and the start of it, I would hope. Let's see, a global development plan under a separate investment agreement. Anyways, reconstruction fund totaling $800 billion. That might cover it. It might not, though. But if they can get that from Russia, it'll be an amazing thing. So I hope that they do get that. Anyways, accelerated free trade agreement with the U.S. Great, that is good. I'm working on that at my end. Ukraine's non-nuclear status. That's a point. There's no other part that they're putting into the summary, but I would say that if this thing falls through, then I'm all in support of Ukraine doing what they need to do, and I'm sure they can keep their stock up to date, as Russia doesn't seem to be able to. Anyways, next point: Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. No compromise. The U.S. proposed trilateral management. Ukraine offers a 50-50 model with the Americans. So Russia is out of that. School education programs promoting understanding and tolerance of different cultures and combating racism and prejudice. This is the prevention thing, CC, that if you're still there, that we missed out on in the United States. This is just the opposite of what we're getting. I think it's a critically important thing to get into Russia, but it does not seem likely. We've heard about the 12th grade, or was it 12th grade textbook that Russian children are using, and it's ugly. So don't know how that will happen. But it's a great thing to put into the plan. And we mustn't mistake tolerance with submission to other cultures. Territories, the most difficult point, because the partnership of Russia and the United States oligarchs want there to be a piece of Ukraine planned, a piece for themselves each. And next point, let's see. Okay, so here's what their options are in this. But Russia withdraws from Dnipropetrovsk. Sumy, and Kharkiv regions. In Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, we stay where we are. Now, that's quite a concession, I would say, on Ukraine's part. Russia demands Ukraine withdraw from Donetsk region. The U.S. Proposes a compromise, a free economic zone, whatever. And if there's no agreement on the stay where we are formula, the free economic zone could only be approved through a referendum. That, in that case, the entire document would have to be put to a referendum. So, people are going to have to vote, and that raises endless problems in actually implementing that in Ukraine. So, yeah, it seems like a dead end there. Russia and Ukraine commit not to change the agreement by force. And of course, these things that are just words on paper, we know where they go. So, okay. But next point, Russia does not interfere with navigation on the Dnipro River and the Black Sea. Well, I'm sure Turkey's down with that at this point. 4 Turkish ships, I believe, so far destroyed by Russia. Prisoner exchange, all for all, return of civilians, children, and political prisoners. This is a huge deal if they can agree to it. I'd be surprised because the basic model of Russia's imperialism is that they get more people, not by having more babies, because that isn't working out so well for them, but by stealing people and forcibly converting them to misery and hatred and the like. Anyways, Ukraine must hold elections as soon as possible after the agreement is signed. Nothing about Russia, nothing about Belarus, who should be a partner to this deal since they're a belligerent party in this war. But anyways, no, that is for thee, not for me. Anyway, the document is legally binding. Oversight would be carried out by a peace council led by Trump. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, once all parties agree to the deal, an immediate full ceasefire comes into force. I think this is an incredibly good deal for Russia, honestly, compared to what I think is going to happen. And several people have commented on the likelihood that even though the Russian leader is absolutely misinformed by his generals, and he's coming to learn that that's the case because, he does apparently have some other news sources. He's still going to follow this path of going on his way to expand the empire at any cost. And for him, he's got a lot at stake personally on that, but I think he's also trying to hold the country together around imperialism as the model for Russia in the long run, even after he's gone. Of course, we all hope it fails, but Sean Penner, he has a Substack on this, but he's saying, I've been saying this for some time, speaking wherever I can about the clear and obvious power shift that has taken place. Do I think he's received flawed information? Yes, that's obvious. But I do think it has any, but I do not, I'm sorry. So sorry, folks. But do I think that it has any impact on his determination to pursue reasons he invaded Ukraine? No, he's an imperialist. And I think that pretty well sums up kind of where he's at on this. So it is troubling that this document is, shaping up to be mostly empty. The number of things that are about paper only is disturbing. The kind of aid that the U.S. gave this year was sort of minuscule, $800 million, and then keeping people in Europe is even questionable because the armed forces of the U.S. Not all of them are going to refuse to take illegal orders, and so I worry about the new Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between the U.S. and Russia in that regard, and you're already seeing some of that being discussed. So, anyway, Wendy, it's not good, but it does show who the person is who is not replying, who is not coming to the table, who's not changing his mind about this or agreeing to it, even though it's extremely generous to him, to Putin. And he should take it while he can get it, because the other path for him is to continue the war, and it doesn't look good. So back to you, Wendy.
Hi, James. Interestingly, Russia has not outright rejected this. I mean, they have, but instead of saying, never, they've said, well, I guess it's a starting point, and we'll work on making some changes. So they've kind of agreed to negotiate on it, which was surprising instead of an outright rejection. I honestly hope they don't negotiate too much, because I would rather they rejected it, because there are far too many concessions. But Iwana is requesting. We did approve it once, and she went back down. It seems like all our requesters are getting knocked back down to listener. Hopefully we can get Iwana up. And after that, it is getting to be time to go. It's Christmas Eve. There's lots to do. It's still morning for me, and we've been at it for 3 hours. So let's see what Iwana has to say, and I don't know how you are, James, with your time.
I have some time, but I agree with you. We should get on with this. And let's see. And before we forget, I will go look at the calendar and see who's up next and what's happening. But anyways, Iwana, welcome. Glad you're here. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Hello, James, Wendy, all of the listeners. I was listening to you, and it's really amazing to have you here, and to have Volya spaces almost every day. So, well, every day, not almost every day, sometimes twice a day, as today. And yeah, I wanted to react to this new peace plan or whatever. I kind of not get excited by the peace plans anymore. They are there, writing on the wall or whatever. But I don't think it will happen, because there is no willing from Russia to actually have peace. They need the war. They live by the war, and they would be destroyed if the war would stop. So I do not believe in this. I think it all started with a 28 peace points peace plan, which clearly indicated that, it's leaked by, well, it was conceived in the Kremlin and leaked by a Russian source, and so on and so forth. And let's remember when this happened. This happened when the offensive in Pokrovsk was not going well. That happened when the Russians had the problems with mobilization. That happened after the month of August and September, with the hit on the refinery. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the situation in Russia is far from being very good. It's far from being very good. They do not advance on the front line. Yes, they take 100 meters there and 200 meters there with the donkeys. They lose some other villages. They brag about 20 houses, and Putin is very happy to report that, a street in whatever village was taken by the Russians. Great victory, In the same time, they demand from Ukraine to give up, territory, and for big cities, bigger than the cities that they managed to occupy until now. And occupation by Russia means usually total destruction. So this peace plan was issued by the Russians because they wanted to create a talking point and a narrative, even opposed narratives. We want peace. They want peace. Who wants peace? Everybody wants peace. Nobody wants peace. Anyway, it helps them, because at that same moment, you remember that Trump was getting frustrated with Putin, that some sanctions were voted in the Congress, and the situation began to deteriorate in the great, big, beautiful relations between the two. Well, I won't say dictators, but let's say authoritarian, because I think it fits both of the two figures. So, what they tried was to reverse the process, to get Trump back in the base team, the Russia team. And they kind of managed, because we hear again that Zelensky shouldn't have started the war. And Zelensky wants missiles all the time. And there are great opportunities of businesses in Russia, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. So let's not get excited by the peace plans. Let's get excited by the progress that Ukraine is doing. New missiles, new drones, new advances, new hits, Novorossiysk, um, refineries, the planes that were destroyed, the submarine, for God's sake, the second submarine. So yeah, Ukraine is doing what it has to do. Is the situation good? No, it's not. It's winter, it's difficult, it's cold. Parts of Ukraine are without electricity. And believe me, I know how it is to be in winter without electricity and heat. I really know it. I remember the communist time. So I know it was hard, but they can get through it. They can get through it. They can continue to fight, and we have seen the willing of the Ukrainian people to fight and to defend their freedom, their sovereignty, their values, their democracy. So, yeah, Merry Christmas for Ukraine is the third Christmas celebrated by Ukraine with the Western world, because they changed the date in 2023. So for this third Christmas, let's hope that the skies will be peaceful, that Ukrainians manage to celebrate in their homes, and leave alone the Kremlin and the Kremlin. It's a Grinch that will never come on the right path. Anyway, back to you.
Perhaps he'll get a seat by a window with a cup of tea. Yeah, maybe Ragnar could slip him something. Anyways, thank you for that, Juana. It is a time to focus on the positive and the light that never gets snuffed out in the darkness is the one that we should follow. And that is it is a path of hope, but it's also a path that empowers us to stay positive and to do what we can to be brave for Ukraine and do what we can to support Ukraine. So all the things in the nest that are fundraisers, think about those. Think about how much need there is in Ukraine compared to your own country, maybe even in your own family. I can say, I'm not rich, but I'm rich by comparison and safe by comparison as well. So I appreciate all those words. I want to thank you for doing that, and appreciate you, Wendy. I think we should go ahead and close, but I just want to warn everybody. Now I'm working at the laptop, and so I've got the volume cranked up, ready to go. To play a song after we do our regular sign off. I will close with a piece of music that I played yesterday. So, Alan, I will not be jealous of you any longer for your song coming through more clearly than mine yesterday. So, anyways, Alan Brewer, darn you. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to comment that I in light of the positive, it's good to remember and to keep supporting the Ukrainians as they go through another difficult holiday season. I did put as the most recent post in the nest a video from the First Corps Azov about a defender and his family and how they're connected at the holiday, and yet how they are celebrating separately. It's a very, very sweet video. So that along with the little bit James is going to play for you is we'll cap it off. Again, a very happy holiday to everybody, and peace and goodwill to men and women and everybody else, as they say. James, did you get a look at the calendar? I took a look. It says Christmas Day in Australia. I don't know if that means that snooping and pooping isn't happening. I'm not quite sure, but for sure we'll have the booms and woe report tonight as usual,
Pretty
or
sure
in the
there's
morning for
something
some
else,
of you.
so I need to look not just at the calendar, but at the Volya Radio timeline here, profile that is. And let me see, where is this thing? Because it went out a while ago. Boop, boop, boom. Okay. No, that's not it. Sorry, folks. Dragging here. Okay, here we go. December 24th. Oh, no, that was last night. I'm sorry. Never mind. I think that is exactly, you got it exactly right. So there's that. Okay, well, I'm ready. You ready?
Yes, I am. Do you want to start?
Slava Ukraini.
Hirom Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Smrt Voraham.
Shmert Voraham.
Join us and Volya Radio. We look forward to seeing you again. Your audience. Your audience.